I recognize the member from Saskatoon-Meewasin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Premier recently addressed the SARM Convention on the 11th, and he must have momentarily forgotten he's Premier of Saskatchewan and not a private citizen. As part of his speech to the delegates, he made an interesting boast. I quote from the Premier's speech, quote, "I took my 14-year-old daughter driving on a grid road south of Current. Should I say that? She was driving for a while. She did just fine," end quote. I'm sure she did do just fine, Mr. Speaker, but as we all know, in Saskatchewan, even with a parent in the vehicle, 14-year-olds are not...
Order. Please allow the member to place his question.
As we all know, even in Saskatchewan, even with parents in the vehicle, 14-year-olds are not allowed to drive in the province. My question is to the Minister of Justice. Will be asking for any agency to investigate the Premier's confessed unlawful activities, or does the Premier get a pass?
Recognize the Minister of Justice.
That's all you can come up with.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite has practiced law in this province for a goodly number of years. He's well aware of the process. If he believes somebody is guilty of an offence, he's perfectly at liberty to make whatever references he wants to whatever police force or other investigating body that he thinks is appropriate. He's been around the practice of law a goodly long period of time, and it's something he need not be looking for advice from this side of the House from. He's fully aware of how to deal with this type of thing if he thinks it's appropriate, and I'll leave it to him to make the decision whether it is in fact appropriate, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Meewasin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the Minister's answer. He obviously has two standards for questions about investigations, one standard for him and one standard for other people. But it's interesting, Mr. Speaker, even the Premier admitted that what he did was wrong. This is what he had to say to the media later that day about his speech, quote, "I've already admitted to allowing a 14-year-old to drive on dirt roads. That's enough illegalities for now," end quote. So the Premier knows what he did was wrong, Mr. Speaker. We all remember the example of the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Daniel Williams, who broke a provincial law by talking on a cell phone when he was driving, and who admitted that he broke the law and who apologized. Premier Williams had the decency to apologize for breaking the law. My question to the government is, will the government agree that breaking the law is wrong, that bragging about it is wrong, and that the Premier should apologize?
Here, here.
Recognize the Minister of Justice.
That's pretty sad. That's really sad.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to leave it to the Premier to, I wasn't there, I'll leave it to the Premier to canvass his own remarks. If the member opposite thinks there's a transgression, I leave it to him to decide whether he wants to do something with that or not. Perhaps the Premier had his tongue firmly planted in the cheek, was speaking figuratively. Perhaps this took place in the field. It's not something for me to comment on or speculate on. If the member opposite thinks there's wrongdoing, he certainly has every right to proceed with this, as would any other citizen, and I leave it to him to do that. And if the Premier chooses to comment, that's up to the Premier as well. But the member opposite knows full well what his remedies are, and I find it a bit shabby and a bit tawdry that we're dealing with it in the House today. This is Saskatchewan.